Okay. Hi, everyone. Really excited to have Boston Impact Initiative here to walk us through the integrated capital game. Zach and Aliana are going to be our hosts, and it's a really exciting opportunity to share with you a resource that I have found very enlightening and very useful in the past. And these resources are provided to you as part of your participation in the program, so you'll be able to use them afterwards and apply them in ways that we'll have a fun time discussing right now. But I'll hand it over to our hosts for the session and let me know if there's anything you need from my end. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. And thank you so much, Stephen, for having us. Thank you to NEIII for bringing us together for this game. This is something that we are really excited to get in front of more fund managers, business support advisors, coaches, and even entrepreneurs themselves. And so those of you that are interested in getting into this line of work, this is a really fun hands-on experience for you. And I just really want to especially thank Stephen and Lubna for inviting BII into the NEIII space so that we can share this information with you. So my name is Aliana Pinheiro. I'm the Impact Director at Boston Impact Initiative. We are a nonprofit impact investing fund, and we make investments into businesses owned by people of color and into community-owned and controlled real estate. And we do that across Massachusetts and in the Northeast. We are place-based investors. And we really, we're localists. So we really believe that, place-based or community-based investing is best done by the people who know that community and have those relationships and have built that community or have built a network of stakeholders around them. And so, we don't believe that we could go to a different place and do this work. So we do have a emerging fund manager training program as another program area of the work that we do. Zach actually heads up that work, but it's really driven out of our place-based approach. We're a 10-year-old organization. We had a pilot fund and fund one, we're on our second fund now. But we would never go sort of beyond Massachusetts and New England because this is the place that we know. And so when folks from California and Minnesota and Texas and different places were calling us and saying, hey, how are you doing? Like, what are you doing? How are you doing that? What is this, community-based investing, integrated capital investing that you're up to in Boston? We realized that it made sense to get people together and show them. And so in the last about 4 years now, coming up, or 3.5 years, we've trained 50 emerging fund managers as well across the country and a few in Canada. And these are folks that are, have a fund that they're either looking to launch or have already launched and want to learn about kind of how we've done what we've been doing for the last 10 years. And Zach will tell you a bit more about it and also about how this card game was sort of born out of that first cohort of emerging fund managers that we worked with. But all of that is just to describe, that we do this very local place-based investing work, but we sort of use that as a lab and a R&D and a place to kind of innovate. And then we share that with, other fund managers and investors and folks that are interested across the country. A bit about myself. So I've been at the organization for 5 years. I had kind of a winding road to become an impact director. It's not a common title. Even in impact investing, it's not always a function that's separated out between, like, on the investment team. But I sit on the investment team alongside the investment director. And I got here by a bit of experience in finance, a bit of experience at internationally at a social enterprise, and doing kind of monitoring and evaluation work at that social enterprise. And then finally, just immediately before my role here at Boston Impact Initiative, I was at the Global Impact Investing Network for a few years on the research team. So again, sort of this winding road from finance to social enterprise to kind of impact investing research, and now here at BII. And I know all of you are taking kind of winding roads towards impact investing too. So I'm sure some of you could probably relate to that winding road. I'm going to hand it off to Zach to introduce himself a bit, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, thanks, Aliana. My name is Zach Neville-Young. I'm the Director of Integrated Capital Solutions at Boston Impact Initiative. In my role, I get to do both kind of some direct investing work alongside Aliana, where we're looking for businesses that fit the thesis Aliana described, businesses in real estate that fit the thesis Aliana described. And then also in my role, I get to kind of work on our national work and partnerships with emerging fund managers, which I'll tell you more about in a sec. I got into impact investing also in kind of a roundabout way. Began my career in private equity due diligence, funnily enough, very mission aligned. But it was not mission aligned at all, actually. I burned out of that pretty quickly. It was not, it was not engaging work for me. And I left that, and I worked at a handful of nonprofits. I went to get a degree at a social justice school and get my MBA there, actually, so that I could kind of continue refining business skill set, but also learn more broadly about what was out there beyond the pure for-profit world. And kind of fell into impact investing. I had approached investment with a lot of skepticism. I thought all of it, was a cynical form of ESG. I thought all of it was a way to just kind of convince people they should still be investing in the same companies, but just argue there was more impact there. And really, when I came across BII, I was really excited to see that people were doing investment work with impact as the primary driver. And I have not left since. I've been at BII now for 4+ years. And luckily, it's a space that's growing rapidly. I think more and more money is flowing to people who care about impact when they're allocating resources. And more people with money are considering impact when they make investments. And so just in the last handful of years, we've seen a number of funds emerge that really reflect what we're trying to do. So it's a rewarding space to be in from that perspective. Liana, I think I turn it back to you now.
Let's see. Yes, integrated capital. So I mentioned a little bit about why place matters to us. Let me also dive into integrated capital. So we use the term integrated capital. Some people say blended capital, full spectrum capital. But essentially what we're doing, and what we're, our suggestion here for as you think about being an impact investor and using these cards, is that we use equity investments, debt investments, and even some grants. So all of that spectrum and everything in between, all of these financial tools that are available to us, but also non-financial tools. So recognizing that in a financial transaction, there's other types of capital that are needed. Social capital, political capital even, and human capital, knowledge capital. So all of these types of capital play into a business's success. And really, when we think about the transactional nature that kind of the main system of capitalism, whether it be banking or even venture capital, equity investing, often does not take that really wraparound approach to capital. And so we do. And that's a really integral piece of our work at BII. As well, that place-based piece, I mentioned my neighbor, but I think, beyond solving the problem of, whether or not I have a computer charger today, I think that place-based approaches allow us to really recognize the uniqueness and the complexity of a given system, whether it be the Boston area, Massachusetts, North Texas, other places, and recognize that these problems are interconnected. And so the only way to handle interconnected problems are with interconnected solutions. And so we need various different stakeholders at the table to engage together and solve problems. One bank is not going to solve all the problems of access to capital in a given neighborhood. But who are all the different players that need to be at the table in order to solve those problems? And so by taking this place-based approach at BII, we really try to engage multiple stakeholders and build those relationships so that we can tackle these tough problems. And so that's sort of what we will be playing at today in our game. And so Zach's going to introduce kind of why we created the game and a bit about the deck.
Yeah, thanks, Aliana. So, and then after that, we'll be diving, and the rest of it will be doing stuff. So we're almost done with the talking at you part. So how we created the game, Aliana mentioned that about 4 years ago, BII started doing work nationally with emerging fund managers, people who wanted something like BII in their communities, and who critically, as Aliana was mentioning, they knew their communities already, right? We can't, airdrop into someone else's community and know what's best for them or how to best support them, but we can share what we've learned from doing this kind of work. So we plotted our first integrated capital cohort. It was an 18-month program with fund managers from across the country. And the vision, because it was going to launch in January 2020, was that we would be flying to these different cities and holding sessions like in people's communities. Naturally, that was immediately disrupted, right? No one was flying in early 2020. So we needed something that was still physically engaging, that you're still using your hands for, you're still like engaging with in the real world, but that also advanced BI's approach. And that's how this card deck was born, really. So we took a lot of the terminology we use, both in investments, you'll see like transaction structures, investment types, things like that. And then also in the other wraparound supports BI uses as part of its investment approach. So there's a suit on stakeholders, there's a suit on impact criteria, there's a suit on entities that you should introduce an organization to. And then we developed case studies, which is what you'll play today, as a way to put that flashcard deck into action. It's like, okay, so now I've learned what a recoverable grant is. Now, hey, let me see if it makes sense in this case. So it helps you kind of apply the stuff a little more dynamically than if we were just talking at you or sending you a flashcard deck. With that, I'm going to demo the digital deck really quickly, just to make sure you all can access it for the games. And please hop in with questions if you have any as you're trying to access it, or feel free to drop them in the chat as well. So I'm going to share my screen. The first thing to do is to log in. And I believe the link was in the agenda, but you go to integratedcapitalcards.com, and Steven's copied it there. You can put any name and email here you want. It's just to track how many people log in. You're going to want to select any III from this drop-down list of organizations. Select there. And then you'll drop in the access code that was also, and Steven's beat me to it. It's that password at the bottom there, any III cards 2024. With that, you can hit join game, and you will pop into the digital deck. So this is a brief instruction. It tracks with the kind of PDF I sent before. You can read this more carefully, but I'm also gonna take you through it right now. So once you come through the login, you'll see kind of each of the different suits in the card deck. As I mentioned, you have both investment dollar or investment types here with types of capital and transaction structure. You also have suits that focus more on wraparound services, local stakeholders, and types of entities. You also have funding sources, which could be a little bit of both, right? Maybe you're thinking about who the right investor is for an organization, or who else they should know in their ecosystem. And then these last two suits down here, the green and the navy blue, are impact related. The impact criteria suit is going to help you, and this right is going to track BII's approach of building financial, social, and political power for communities of color. But the green suit is going to help you think through whether an investment meets certain criteria we use to make investments. And the suit at the bottom right here, impact covenants, thinks about agreements you can build into your investment that further a shared goal around an impact target. So you might make an investment thinking about the environment as a criteria, but then you might, to enhance the impact of this investment, set an environmental goal for the business. Perhaps it's reducing emissions, sourcing locally, recycling more, what have you. It's kind of how these two interplay. I'm going to show you quickly what it looks like to start picking cards. So in a sec, we'll invite you to talk about an investment you made in the past. And I believe that uses the type of capital suit. So if you want to see more here, you'll open the suit, it's bottom right corner, and you'll see all the different options in here that we have as capital types. And keep in mind, this tips the hand a bit for the next exercise. It's not just loans and equity investments, right? We consider grants or donations to be a form of investment and really an important capital type in scaling mission-aligned ventures. So we encourage you to think more inclusively about the type of capital. And then, you can pop from here to other sources or other suits, quickly. So if you want to pop over to the stakeholder suit, just do that. And if you look at the cards and you want to kind of set it aside to be building your hand or your answer to a given question, perhaps it's grant, you hit the star and you'll see it appeared over here on the right in my hand. So you go through and you're picking different stars, reading it a little more closely than I am right now. And once you're ready, you can click show hand and it will just show you the ones that you've picked. Also an option if anyone prefers Spanish language to English language, the suit is bilingual, or the online deck is bilingual, so this pops into Spanish for everything. I prefer English, so I'm going to put it back. Any questions for me before we dive in? Wonderful. And if any emerge, just put them in the chat, and we can make sure we answer them as you're trying to work through this. So with that, Aliana, it goes back to you to talk about the first kind of warm-up game we're going to play.
Yes. And let's see, so the link to the card game is here. Oh, there you go. So this warm-up game that we're going to play in pairs is a storytelling game, because we want you all, even if you have not even yet started your career in impact investing, we want you to recognize yourself as a part of the integrated capital impact investing ecosystem. And so we are going to be playing with 3 suits. The type of entity, type of capital, and type of or impact criteria. And I'll just guide you through quickly. I'll share my screen and guide quickly. But one way to do that is you just star. So I'm here in the Integrated Capital Cards website, and I'm going to star type of entity, impact criteria, and type of capital. And then I'm going to start game. And now I have these 3, just the 3 showing because I starred them. So I starred them and then I press start game. And so what I would do if I were you in each of the, or what you're going to do in these pairs, is you are going to tell a story about a transaction that you have taken part in. And so you will describe the type of entity. So you're going to open the suit and go through and select the type of entity. One example, I'll just tell a quick story here, but perhaps you have made a donation to a local nonprofit that you support. And so maybe it is a nonprofit entity, and then you can switch suits up here. So I'm in type of entity. I'm going to switch over to impact criteria. It is a conservation nonprofit, and you made a grant. And so then when you show your hand, you can say, I supported the World Wildlife Foundation or fund with a grant because they are doing work in forest conservation in Ecuador. And that's really important to me. And so that's what I did. Or you might tell I'll just reset my hand there, but you might tell a different story of a loan that you helped close if you're working at a bank or something like that. You can also select more than one impact criteria or one card to describe the type of entity. So don't be afraid to take more than one card. But does everybody understand? So you're going to be playing in these 3 suits. As Stephen put in, type of capital, type of entity, and impact criteria in the chat. And you will select 1 or more cards from each of those suits to tell your partner in your breakout group the story. You have about 3 minutes each to do this. This is quick just to get you into the card game and get you warmed up. And then we will come back and share. So what questions do you have about our first game in the breakout groups? Anything? And if any of you are on phones or cannot get into the cards right now, you can still tell your story of impact or of your investment using those 3 types, the 3 cards to help you describe the investment. You can still tell that to your partner, even if you can't look at the cards. So please do participate, even if you're not able to play with the cards on a desktop or laptop computer.
I have a question. I had briefly, sorry.
Oh, okay, Shireen first and then Shannon. Shireen, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I started the game and I just see the 3 cards. So I don't think is that right? Where is the story?
The story is what you tell. So the story is from Shireen's head, where, what is the impact investing story that you're going to tell?
Okay, so just like make up a scenario where we're trying to solve something. Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah, you make up a scenario of an investment that you have made. Could be a grant, could be a loan, an equity investment. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Shannon, please go ahead.
I had briefly got disconnected, so the link to choose the cards, it's not, when I got reconnected, I don't see it anymore. Would it be possible for you to reshare that link for us to
of course.
Cards? Yeah, thank you.
Double share there. Oh, and here, let's share the access codes and things too. Yeah.
And while you're pulling that, I'll just say too, once we put you into the breakout rooms, and this holds true for the next time we do it on the case, Ayan and I will stay in the main room, but if you want to pop back in here to ask a question, if you want to shoot us a message into the main room and invite us into your breakout room, we are available, even if you're off in the side room.
Oh, right. Yeah, Stephen. So we're not supposed to be in, the breakout rooms. Great. Excellent. Okay. We will send you off whenever Stephen is ready.
Okay. You're all right. Doing well. Good. So I think we got it all set up, Aliana.
Great, thank you.
Nice. Yeah, looks right. So nice that you have a neighbor who's just got a charger that works for your computer.
And we're very close with them. We've only been here for a year, but we have keys to each other. Our kids play together all the time. We keys to each other's houses. Oh, Shireen came back and left.
Looks like she joined in.
Yeah. But yeah, he actually wasn't there. He called me and said, "Let me tell you where to find it in my house," which was just really nice. Yeah. he called me right after you and I hung up, and I had like 2.5 minutes to run over there. So that's why I was a minute late. Ugh. Oh, so we should be timing. So they should come back
They went in at 12:29 or 12:30.
okay, so 35 past the hour about, Stephen. We'll bring them back.
Okay.
And maybe
Okay.
we can broadcast a message in a couple minutes just to remind them to switch, because oftentimes the first person will talk too long.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll okay, 1 second. Hi, Francois.
Hey, sorry, I felt a bit lonely in my room, so
Oh
Oh.
join
no.
you.
Yeah, it looks like Shireen dropped out. Let me put you in a room with Marcella and you two can chit chat. Is that okay?
Perfect, looking forward to it.
Okay. Hmm. Hi, Marcella.
Hi, Stephen. I got disconnected for a bit.
Yeah, no
Sorry.
worries. It's okay. I'm gonna I can't add a room. So actually I could make you back into room 3 so the two of you can go in that one actually. Let me move you both there. Okay, and Francois, you're gonna have to move back yourself, I think. Are you able to choose your room again?
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Well, maybe we'll give them a couple extra minutes then, just so that they can.
Yeah, this is the nice part about doing it over 2 hours is we have plenty of time for this kind of stuff. Stephen, we do a lot of these in 90 minutes, and it's like we start getting pretty tight for time toward the end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad that we insisted on doing the 2 hours, Aliana.
Me too. Yeah, it just would have been. It would have been fine, but it would have been tight.
Yeah. Stephen, how far through the program is this group?
It's just been a month now. So we've had 5 sessions we've organized, and then we participated in the Croton Institute's Blaze Learning Week, where they had 3 days of like 4 sessions each day. So they've gotten a good amount of content already in this first month, but they're just getting to know each other still. And that's why I wanted to get the game in early so they would get a chance with each other. I'm just going to let them know they have about 3 minutes left. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Sure.
perfect. Was just gonna say.
How's the weather been in Boston? I'm missing it, honestly. I'm missing the snow, but I don't know if you've gotten any, have you?
No, it's bright and sunny and cold, but not snowy.
I'm out
Are
in
you
Syracuse,
in?
New York. We got a bunch of snow. Don't worry.
Okay.
He's just in the
Nice.
snow belt up there. He's just
That's
getting
really fun.
snowed on all the time. Sometimes he shows us his outside his window so that, us sad Bostonians who don't get snow anymore can live vicariously through him.
Isn't that wild? I know global warming's happening and we're all aware of it, but it's like I don't know how much more snow y'all are gonna get like indefinitely.
Right. I think like the ski industry, winter sport industry in New England is going to be, yeah, it's going to go extinct.
Yeah.
Are you in Wales,
I'm
Stephen?
hoping we get yeah, we are in Wales. There's a snowstorm this week, but it's not coming down far enough south. So I think it's only going to hit Scotland. But yeah, it rained yesterday. It's supposed to rain tomorrow. It's cold, but it's been nice. Been out in the farm all day today, so nice to be inside now. There's a fire going right in front of me.
I can see the like fire glow in your face. It looks really nice.
Yeah, yeah,
That's great.
That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. And it's one of these fire pits that's like it's all ceramic on the outside, so it's a huge heat sink, and it's so much nicer than like the metal boxes that I know from like ski trips and such, which
Mhm.
just like they don't keep the heat; they just let it all out. So this is keeping the house warm all night long. So last night it was very cozy.
That's great.
Mm.
Should we give them the 1 minute warning?
Yeah, I'll give them the 1 minute now. Okay.
Do I have to hit close now? A message just popped up for me.
I'm pretty sure that I set it for a minute after I press close now.
Okay, that's fine then.
Okay. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
Good. I ran one Zoom, I ran one thing where like the settings were wrong and the breakout rooms would just end and people were so upset.
Oh, people are so mad when you do that.
They're really mad. They're like, where was our minute warning? I was like, I'm so sorry.
Like, I was talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hate that too. And then what happens often is when you like close down Zoom, like that doesn't keep up the prior settings as before. And so if you ever name the breakout rooms and stuff, you have to like make sure you set the settings correctly to keep the names.
The latest AI drama is that, I don't know, we like updated Zoom or something, and it like added passwords into existing meetings we had, but it didn't put them into like the meeting agendas, obviously. So we just would like show up to a meeting and not be able to get in and don't have the password. We've solved it, but it was a dramatic week for sure. Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully that was enough time. I know it's a little brief.
How is that, everybody? Did you tell stories? Did you get to play a little bit with the cards? Yes, I'm seeing some heads nod. Zach, were you gonna do the debrief? Now I can't. Oh yes, I like these. I got thumbs up. Were you gonna do the debrief?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to.
Okay.
So really there's not a ton of structure on this one. It's a popcorn debrief. Just would love to have people who are willing to pop a hand up or just come off mute and tell us about the investment they put together.
I could go first.
Thank you, Tracy. Yes, please.
Okay, so I chose not-for-profit, and I chose grant and ecological footprint. I chose that because that's my background. I've worked with the not-for-profit for years, so I'm very much familiar with how do we get funds. It's always through grants. Of course, and then I looked at, and because my background is marine biology, then of course it's the ecological aspect of it. So that's what I basically chose. It's a little different from where I am now and what I am doing, but I feel it's more familiar based on what's presented in the cards. Because currently I manage my own social enterprise. So it's slightly different, but yeah, so that's what I went with. It was kind of like, because of the demonstration, it was pretty easy to choose the cards, and because the demonstration was based on what I am doing, it was also easy to choose the card. Yeah.
No, for sure. Appreciate that, Tracy. And yeah, especially if you play other games with us or as, you know, kind of we keep going, there are other forms of investment nonprofits can take in too. And it's fun to see how other cards can get leveraged there. But thank you for starting us off. Pasang, I saw your hand go up next.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I actually was in a room with Will Wu. And so we actually had kind of very similar entity that we chose. So we both actually chose Community Land Trust. And I guess that kind of speaks to Boston Impact Initiative and kind of the focus around place-based impact investing. Because I think both of us kind of came with it from our own personal experiences and within the community, looking at some of the specific needs in the communities. So that was actually very interesting. And we both also focused on, I think it was community ownership and control, which was very interesting.
Fantastic. Did you all pick a capital type or two that was coming in or out of the land trust?
Yes, so I picked grant. I believe Will pick grant as well. Yes. Yeah. So we both picked the same entity and same financial structure as well. Yeah. Funding source.
Fantastic. Yeah, land trusts are really cool. A great partner in our work a lot of times the real estate we end up in, precisely what you said, right? Community control. Land banks are a great way to facilitate that. So we often see them partnering with investments we get into. Nora, I think I saw your hand next.
I talked about a project I'm actually currently working on as part of the Turner Mint investment competition. And so I'm working with a company who is accepting safes, which is really, I think, good for them because it's a lower barrier to entry for really innovative entrepreneurs who aren't necessarily from Boston or San Francisco. And they're working on an ecological slash farmer well-being project. They do ag robotics, which is really, really cool. And so I picked ecological stewardship because that's kind of my main area of interest. They're accepting safes, and they're a really exciting young company. They're beyond kind of the startup. I think they have about 10 employees, but what they really need to do right now is to scale. And I think safes are a really great way to kind of help them grow out and grow not only their financials, but also their impact potential.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a really exciting one. Just for the group, in case anyone's not familiar, SAFE is Simple Agreement for Future Equity. It's a capital type that lets you, as an investor, make an equity-like investment in a company. Someday it becomes equity. But you can do it before they're ready to put a price or a valuation on their business, which takes some time for the business to get to a scale where that really makes sense. So it's a capital type BII uses a lot. We're actually about to close a SAFE investment on Friday, which I'm very excited about. So really appreciate you bringing that in, Nora. Kelvin, I think I saw you next.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So I was in the same room with Funke, and she mentioned the project she is currently working on. So I think I will just also pass the baton to her to talk about this story.
Yeah, please.
Thanks, Kelvin. Yeah, this is also a project that I had pitched with a few classmates for the finance investment competition. But it's basically the idea of as we chose for our entity would be a startup, a social enterprise that's working on building a desalination or water desalination plant in Namibia. So this is basically taking water from the sea, the ocean, and purifying it to make it potable to address water scarcity in Namibia. And so for our financing or type of capital, we chose a term loan to help kind of finance the building of that, as well as a technical assistance grant to support kind of the technical capacity for building and also financing, structuring the loan as well. And we in terms of the impact, we chose local consumption and local production in terms of having a local desalination plant that's helping generate clean water for local consumption.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, really a lot to unpack there, and I'll go very quickly because I want to move us into the case study. But I think term loan's a great choice. I'd imagine that project will secure some debt. Projects like that that are kind of energy or resource related do well with covering regular debt payments. I'd also be interested to see if they end up or kind of that project would end up raising equity like capital to build some runway and kind of further boost development. So really fascinating there. And then I wonder if you thought about the kind of local production or I know you said local consumption, like kind of more jobs or economic related opportunities, because I'd imagine a project like that would create a ton of local employment.
Yeah, I think that would be, it would be a good opportunity for local employment and structuring and managing the.
Fantastic. And then to round us out, Anna, if you wouldn't mind doing.
Yeah, I have another example for local production and local consumption. So I was thinking about a crowdfunding campaign that I participated in a couple of years ago. So it was a sustainable fashion brand, and they were just in their starting phase. So they were launching the brand, and they were producing clothes that were made locally. So in that case, they were made in France, and they were also made of organic cotton. So it was at the same time, good for local production and local consumption, and also for ecological stewardship. It was a really nice investment because I felt like I could support that brand and be part of the journey.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And you guys will get a chance to explore this in just a sec when we do the case study, but you mentioned the crowdfunding piece. We have that in our transaction structure suite. So there's both cards you can play with and the types of capital around, like what kind of money's coming in? Is it grant? Is it a term loan? Is it a safe note? And then also like the transaction structure offers you mechanisms in finance. So maybe it's a mechanism on how to structure repayment. In this case with crowdfunding, which is one of the structure cards, it's a mechanism of how to facilitate investors getting in. And definitely a great one, particularly as projects are very community focused, where you have those relationships, right? A broad set of people to raise from. So thank you all for that warm up game, and hopefully kind of from that you got a little more comfort with the deck, and also you realize that you already are impact investors, and would love for you to keep that hat on as you consider DEI health. So I'm going to jump into the case study now. So let's see if I can pull this up. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the case, very high level. I know we've shared it with you before, and then want to make about 5 minutes of space for any questions you have right off the bat. And then we're going to send you into breakout rooms of 4 to 5 to start grappling with the case along BII's mission. So in the first, and you'll have about 30 minutes in breakout rooms. The first 10 minutes we'll ask you to consider this round one. What kind of relationships does this enterprise need? So before you start thinking about how to capitalize them, or if you'd want to capitalize them, we encourage you to dive into stakeholders. Like, who should they be in touch with? How should they be in relationship with their community? And also keeping that investor hat on, what introductions could we make for them as a place-based investor, as someone like BII who's got tentacles out around the community? In the second round, and we'll kind of ping you when you should move on, we'll ask you to think about what impact covenants you would want to use in a potential investment. So where do you see an opportunity to come to a shared goal with them to advance an area of their impact? And then finally, as you get to the last 10 minutes, we'll encourage you to look at type of capital, which is the suite you were just in with different capital types. And then you can also jump into transaction structures. You want to get a little more nuance with it. Think about how you would capitalize this business. What types of capital do they need to be successful? So I'll do the overview, we'll have Q&A, and then you guys will go into breakout rooms and answer these 3 questions. Then we'll all come back, we'll do a similar share, and then what's fun is this case is patterned off a real BII investment opportunity that we considered. Alyana and I can share whether we invested and what's happened to them since. So, the case. Today you are considering investment in DEI Health. They are an e-learning platform that provides cultural competency training for healthcare organizations and professionals. They were founded by a handful of doctors who really saw opportunity and need in the healthcare sector to do this work. In the US, there are very disparate outcomes, as I imagine there are in other countries, for patients of color. And a lot of that, we believe, comes from unconscious bias and other kind of gaps in cultural competency from healthcare professionals. So this business was founded to address that. They're a limited liability company owned by their 3 co-founders. They own about 80% of the company. The CEO holds about 15%. The CEO is not one of the founders. She was hired by the founders to really lead day to day. And then an employee ownership pool holds the remaining 5%. So ownership is split out among the founders and employees. CEO is an African-American woman, which is the group that's experiences the most disparate health outcomes in the US. In terms of governance, how's this organization run? The board is comprised of the 3 co-founders and the CEO. So the CEO kind of has 1 vote of 4 on the board, but holds the day-to-day management responsibility. the study goes on to, or the case study goes on to talk about how they have 4 full-time employees, and they're paid above living wage on a salaried basis. And then it talks about some of their current customers, which are mainly, as you'd expect, institutional clients, so like big healthcare systems, and healthcare companies, specifically insurance providers, hospital systems, and clinics. And then, we direct you to the financial snapshot, which I could pull up quickly in a sec, just to show you at a very high level what's going on there. But right now, the only investment DI Health has taken on to date is a line of credit, a small one that they have from their bank, and it's fully drawn, so they can't get any more money from that facility. And they're looking for more investment to increase their team and deliver on a pretty robust sales pipeline. So they have companies identified that they want to sell to, and kind of expand their impact and business that way, but they don't have the kind of staff capacity or cash to go hire the staff to do that. And I'll show you quickly what the financials look like at an executive level. Okay. So here we include, and if you've had time to flip through this, it's helpful, the income statements, what kind of revenues and costs they're incurring, a projected balance sheet, as well as cash flow. You'll see some red numbers here, particularly in cash, which is impossible. That's because these projections do not include the requested financing. So basically that's us saying, hey, if they want to grow like this, they do not have enough cash to do so, basically. If you look at how they plan to grow, they're at about 725,000 in revenue to date, and they see a pathway to, eventually 3, 4, and 6 million in the long term. It's a pretty high margin service, right? They kind of record these trainings or like build this content, and then it's pretty easy to deliver once it's built, so a very high margin. The expenses really come from their team, right, who are building new content, selling the content, and overseeing the organization. In terms of the balance sheet, you do see some high accounts receivable, right? Those institutional clients are going to take a while to pay, and pretty tight cash as it comes in today, pretty low cash, especially relative to how large of an organization it is. So I will pause there and ask what questions this group has before we jump into this. Shireen, I think I saw your hand go up.
Yes. So when we are deciding to invest, are we like an active investor where we're also making suggestions about how to reorganize their operations or financials, anything inside the company?
Yeah, I would say you're considering this opportunity as an impact investor. So with that, you have obviously the ability along BII's approach to invest other things, right? You can make connections for them. You can invest your social capital. You can offer coaching in specific areas. Mm-hmm. I think it's a choice for you to sit with how much you'd want to like make that an offer to them versus force them to do that, and how much power you want to wield as investor. I think that's something for you all to sit with as you're making your choices here.
Okay, thanks.
Question for me?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, just around the kind of mentality of the owners, of the current owners. What's their end goal with the business? Would be helpful to know.
Yeah, we try and keep these cases simple enough that you guys can unpack it in 30 minutes. There's always fun stuff like that doesn't quite make it in. I think for the purposes of answering this case study, you can approach it as though the owners, see real opportunity in this business. So they want it to grow. They also don't have, they're not full-time in the business, so they're not, working in it day to day. So they've hired a CEO to, grow this thing and see opportunity there, but they're not kind of living, breathing it every day. I don't know if that's helpful.
One
Aaron.
question.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead. No, I
we
saw a
go
hand up. I didn't notice it. Go ahead.
Aaron, then Nora.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about, like, are we assuming that we will invest and then just like going through the 3 rounds, or are we supposed to discuss like whether or not we want to invest as well on top of those like 3 rounds of discussions?
Yeah, I think you should definitely talk about whether you want to invest as a group. And if you want to do that right off the bat and then talk about stakeholders, or if you want to talk about stakeholders and then covenants and then do that, I think it's something you should hold in the back of your mind as you're going through these questions. And I'll kind of leave it to your group to figure out if you need to address that first before going in. What I would ask is if you decide right off the bat not to invest, to still kind of sit with, if you were to invest, what stakeholders, what covenants, what capital type you would use. And then Nora.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that can we assume that the owners are open to ownership dilution?
You can definitely bring that as an option. And similar to the question Jock raised, you have to decide whether that's like something you'd push for, something you'd advocate for, or something that's like, hey, we're only doing this if you dilute. So you kind of have to think about where you want to draw the line there. But definitely something you should consider as part of this. With that, just to make sure you guys have as much time as possible, Stephen, I think we should prepare the breakout rooms. And similar to last time, feel free to shoot us a message or hop back into the general room if you have any questions. And please, as you're about to go on your way, identify a kind of person to report back for your group as one of your first tasks in the small group, just so when we get to the share back, that doesn't have to be the only person who talks for you, but someone's taken notes and is able to share what you all brainstormed back with everybody. Okay, I think we're ready.
Great. I've set up the rooms. I'm going to open them now, and then we'll drop notes to remind you to switch like at the chat, since we have a long time in the breakout room. So look out for the broadcast messages to stay on track with time. All right, enjoy.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope that was enough time. We definitely wanted to save some time to debrief. But I will turn it over to Aliana to facilitate this next section.
Yes. Oh, very intense simulation. Oh, I'm glad. There must have been good discussion in your group. That's great. Okay, what we're going to do is take some time now to hear back from the groups. So I know that Zach had asked you to have a note taker or someone who could share back. So whomever would like to go first in the note takers, maybe 3 minutes or so, 3 or 4 minutes to share back from each group. I don't know if you were in group 1, but if group 1 wants to share back first, I'm not sure who the groups were.
Yeah, group 1 was Anna, Ermina, Marcella, Maria, and Tracy.
Okay, well, if anybody in group 1, Tracy, I'm not sure, you weren't taking notes, but does anyone remember what you decided on? So, what types of relationships did this enterprise need from local stakeholders? What types of impact covenants did you include, if any? And what type of capital and transaction structure did you end up deploying here?
Marcella, I am not sure who was taking notes. I could only open the cards and look at that, but I was talking too much in that group, so it would be great if someone else is just, presenting here.
Yeah, so
Great,
I was
okay.
taking notes.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Because I was very much enjoying the discussions. So when it came to stakeholders, we agreed on government as an important stakeholder, the Chamber of Commerce, corporations, capital providers, mentors, especially since it's like in the earlier stages, policymakers was a discussion that we were having. But when it comes to discussions, maybe Tracy or the other members of the group could clear a little bit more. Then we also talked about professional service providers, and there was also discussion on whether labor organizations and unions, but I think the outcome of that was no. And then when it came to covenants, we discussed distributed ownership, since that was like a recurring theme in the case study, living wage, racial and gender equity, worker benefits, and sustainability policy and practices was also in the discussions. Tracy came up with very, very good examples that show how the small things tell a lot about the sustainability practice of the company and can affect their perception. And then for capital, I did not take much notes, but I know that grants was something that was agreed for everyone.
Yeah, maybe I can add something to the type of capital. So we were thinking about a grant, but also the royalty finance or the revenue-based capital flow would be something that we can imagine. And then we were also discussing about common stock and option and warrants, but we came to the conclusion that it wouldn't be good. I think it wouldn't be good at that stage of the company. Maybe at a later point, but not at the moment.
Okay, great. Thanks, Anna and Marcella. So yeah, super interesting that grants came up sort of to the top of your list. I will circle back to that when we finish up with the share back. But yeah, interesting there. And I, some of the noting, Marcella, that sort of reoccurring theme of the distributive ownership, that was like maybe a bit of our tell on our end from the BII side, but great great thought process as you went through those impact covenants. So very interesting. Okay, let's go with group 2 and see what group 2 came up with.
Yeah, that's our group. That's me, Will, Sunita, and Shireen. And we had a few different things that we saw. We actually went in a different direction in group 1, surprising in many ways. But essentially for our local stakeholders, we had a few. One was capital providers, one was business associations, incubators and accelerators, professional service providers, and policymakers. We chose this set because I think there's a lot of networks, particularly for the medical community, that they could tag in the future, which could be pretty interesting for them. But considering it's an LLP, we didn't really see some of the other approaches making sense for them in the long term. Then for their impact covenants, considering that a lot of them already hit in terms of gender and racial equity, things as investors we'd like to see were procurement equitable and the compensation ratio within their firm. We'd want to see those being hit and targeted pretty concisely. Then in terms of types of capital that we'd be liking to see, receivable financing was mentioned as a pretty important one simply for the short term, but we'd like to see some covenants attached to that because we don't like seeing that like high of an accounts receivable over time. But since they do have such a large accounts receivable right now, it would make sense for that one. We also thought of SAFE, which seems like a pretty nice system if they can get safe capital. I don't think that would be a bad thing for them, as well as convertible debt. And then in terms of their transaction structure, we'd like to see income sharing agreements and pay for success, and probably some of the other things as well, but we ran out of time to discuss at length. So, yeah.
Amar, what was the first one? You said income sharing, and before that, what was the other transaction structure?
Income sharing and pay for success. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Great. So yeah, some different outcomes, some different thoughts on the structure. I'm hearing revenue. Well, there was the receivable-based financing on the one hand, revenue-based financing on the other. You know, obviously different capital types, but a similar thought process in terms of, you know, you have this revenue that's going to be coming in or receivables that are going to be coming in. Let's figure out how we can repay based on those on that revenue that's going to be coming into the business. So nice. A theme picking up there. Okay, group 3.
Yeah, that's us. Yeah, so do you want to go, or I could go too. So I guess in terms of like round 1, we looked mainly at business associations and governments, just because we thought they could get a lot of like additional clients and customers through that, like insurance provider associations, hospital associations, and then we also looked at incubators and capital providers as well. And then for round 2, we looked, I think they already had like 5 of them: employee ownership, living wages, racial gender equity, and worker benefits. So we just wanted to like codify that. And then we also looked at compensation ratio, um, and then community control and workplace democracy, just because we feel like for a product like that, where they're very focused on DEI in the healthcare system, they should, you know, take into account like the employee as well as stakeholder, like customer opinion within the product to like make it more robust. And then for round 3, yeah, we didn't really look at grants. I think my opinion was that like if they're profitable, we shouldn't use a grant because they can get it elsewhere. And we were looking mainly at convertible debt, or I like royalty financing more, just because I thought it was a good in between. We don't know where the revenue is going to go. It's a projection. So if you can tie like the financing back to the revenue, or maybe like one of like, I think the net margin, I think that would be like a more concessionary approach. Yeah, that wouldn't hurt their like financing too badly. And then we didn't get to talk much about like transaction structure, but I would say like I agree with what Amar said, like pay for success or income sharing. Yeah.
Great, really great ideas. And yeah, the one thing I've noticed, I think everybody said government would be a good stakeholder to connect with so far. So I'm hearing that as well come through. Okay, there were 5 groups, is that right, Stephen? Okay, great. Let's do group 4. Then after group 5, we'll come back and tell you some more. Please go ahead.
I'll start off for group 4, but everyone feel free to jump in if I miss something. So in terms of partnerships, so we didn't highlight government actually, but we did highlight business associations. We were thinking just like the idea that kind of really capitalizing on that huge pipeline they have was important. So just connecting on really developing those sales expertise seemed to be something we wanted to focus on, and we thought that could get it done. We also noted how sales would declined in the years that they provided, so was a little worried about client retention. So thought maybe that some expertise there could be helpful too. Anchor institutions, just as hospitals were highlighted, so obviously that would be great partnership. And then business support organizations. In particular, we were thinking about, I don't know if this counts as a business support organization, but the American Hospital Association, and the fact that there were 1,600 hospitals that had signed on the commitment to cultural competency training. So we thought getting involved there, maybe getting an endorsement would be really helpful. On covenants, nothing new that that hasn't been mentioned, but the equitable procurement and then the distributed ownership maybe, I don't know if someone said it yet on the procurement piece, but just because of the fact the case really talked about the two contractors that were not diverse. So we thought maybe having a program there would make sense. And then we were just getting into the debate on the type of capital, but convertible debt seems to be where we landed. Kind of the idea that, again, we loved this pipeline they were talking about, would love to conservatively participate in the upside. But if anyone wants to jump in there, I know we got cut off, so I might not be capturing people's thoughts exactly. But that's it for
Yeah,
me.
thanks, Lee. Like, I think you said most of the things. Maybe the last one that we selected was safe capital. So yeah, but so far I think you said all. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Leah. Thanks, Kevin. And from group 5.
I guess that's going to be us. So for the types of relationships, local stakeholders, we agreed anchor institutions would be a great one. Business support organizations, just so they can better understand, what it is that's going to help them kind of get to that next level, the relationships they need to broker. So I guess Leah had mentioned one large association, but I'm sorry, that's on the business association side, but more so like just the day-to-day of the operations, perhaps how to cut down on some of the accounts receivables, I think could be really beneficial for them. But then capital providers and professional service providers. So we kind of had a lot of different stakeholders in mind because we identified the two key issues as obviously the cash crunch from accounts receivables and then staffing to be able to service that pipeline that they have. When we thought about the impact covenants, workplace democracy, we felt like it's still a fairly small organization. It'd be great if they put into place, as the organization grows, different democratic measures that can benefit everyone and give everyone a voice as they continue to make more decisions. The other one was distributed ownership. So we do think that it's a bit top heavy right now, and especially if they're forecasting the type of growth that's going to be dependent on employees and dependent on labor, that they should distribute that ownership and distribute that equity across the organization. And then also, I think those were the two, primary ones that we had, but please, anyone else from the group, please let me know if I missed anything there. Type of capital, we were going back and forth on a lot of different ideas there. Where we kind of landed was in the variable dividend or preferred equity transaction or capital structure. And that was mostly because we didn't feel like they had the operating cash flow to service the debt of any type in the near term. If there was bridge financing, we didn't know exactly how long that bridge would be. It looked like they were still going to be operating at a cash deficit for the next, at least 2 years. So didn't want to put that undue burden on them and felt like there'd be a lot of flexibility with the variable dividend option, as well as just the fact that that's going to get paid out after net income is considered. So that's where we landed. We were talking a little bit about options and warrants, but okay. Okay, we also included worker benefits. I'm sorry, I see Funke's comment in the chat. Worker benefits under the covenants. So yeah, I'll pause there. And that was where we ended up.
And Jack, sorry, so the structure or the type of capital that you ended up with, can you just repeat that? I was taking notes and then I missed for a second.
Yeah, the variable dividend.
Variable dividend, okay.
Was a transaction type, and if we were going to do a type of capital, it was going to be preferred equity.
Preferred equity, got it, yeah, okay. Okay, great. So maybe I want to just reflect a little bit on some of the kind of structures and thoughts that you came up with, and then we'll talk about what we did. So, from our perspective, often, it can be helpful for impact covenants if a company is already doing something really well, and there's sort of a thought that as they grow, they might grow out of doing this well, or they might not have the incentive to do it well. Sometimes then you want a covenant that piece of impact. So if it felt like there's some sort of threat to diverse ownership, or let's see, there was another one that they were already doing, I think living wage. If it felt like there was something that could be threatened, then that's when you might want to covenant something. But generally, I was hearing procurement, compensation ratio, community and workplace workplace democracy benefits, and kind of the community feedback. I can't remember what this one is called. But those ones, are great ideas because they're not necessarily in the current structure of the organization. However, it does seem from the short case study that they might be aligned on that. And so one thing that BII tries to do is come in and make sure that we're setting covenants that the business would be aligned on, and that they would also want to achieve together with us. So we try not to do it as a power over exercise, but more as a, together with the company, we set covenants because they're also motivated to create impact in those places. Zach, do you want to reflect briefly? I think I heard a lot of, convertible debt safe, royalty and revenue-based financing. Do you want to reflect on those?
Yeah, and should I mention what we did as well?
Yes.
Yeah, so the group did a very good job collectively of hitting every capital type that went into this business. So nice job. BII invested, so we did invest a combination convertible debt and regular debt structure. I can tell you a little bit about. It was a little funky. And I know some groups mentioned convertible debt, some groups mentioned safe notes, which are very similar to convertible debt. And then a co-lender, so someone else who invested at the same time, invested royalty or revenue-based finance into the business. And in hindsight, I think that was just as good a choice as what we did, if maybe not a little better. So the group did a very good job hitting on those. I think our committee felt at the time, and I think this surfaced in your all's discussion, there's kind of two paths for this business, right? It's an established business. It's earning hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's close to profitability. It had the opportunity to grow steadily and just kind of grow enough to cover debt and be a functional small business. It did not have to take on this big hockey stick curve. So that's some of the reasoning behind why the committee did a hybrid toward the term loan structure, and why the co-lender did a royalty. The royalty giving you a bit more upside for a bit more growth opportunity. We also felt there was a pathway, and some of the notes underscored this. I know one group lifted up the pledge of healthcare systems, but there's also opportunity for a business in the sector to grow like a hockey stick. So we tried to pick a structure that could capture both of those realities. It had the business, it gave them a holiday, and then it asked them to pay back debt until they raised a couple $1 million in a future financing, at which point it would convert to equity. So it was a convertible debt, but it had amortization. It had payments, which is very weird. Most convertible debt does not ask for payments. So that's kind of what we did, and some of the reasoning behind it. I heard preferred equity with dividends. I think that's interesting. I think it would have been tough to value the business at that stage. But could we have come to an agreement and put a value on the business to purchase equity, some sort of payment based on dividends that's helping us take an income as they're taking an income? I think makes a lot of sense. Because this is not the kind of business that's likely to go get acquired and create an exit for a pure equity position. I also heard grants as an option. Grant capital is always a plus from the business owner's perspective, because it's non-dilutive, it's free cash. From the investor or a foundation's perspective, you do kind of reserve grants for the highest impact businesses that need grant funding to get to a point where they're investable by other sources. If a business can build a pretty solid case for traditional capital or capital that pays you back, you do lean toward that type over grant, just because grant is a very scarce resource in that sense and a hard resource to provide at the volume that businesses often need to scale. So we don't usually look at grant for this stage of business. And Aliana, I think those are the capital types we hit on.
Yes, that's great. Excellent. Well, would love to, in the last 5 or 6 minutes, would love to just get some of your reactions. What was that like? Is this a helpful, is this going to be a useful tool going forward? Do you think you'll ever look at these cards again? And how is this exercise for you?
I have a question.
Sure.
Well, first, to answer your question, I thought it was like super useful, especially for some of the things we're not familiar with. Like, it's a great way to learn and like put it into practice. I'm more likely to remember it. But I had a question. I didn't feel like it was addressed in the case, or maybe I missed it. Are we certain that the outcomes of the proposed outcomes of this group are being achieved? Like, how do we see the impact? Did you track it in terms like reduced mortality or better health outcomes?
Oh, so right. That's a good question. We did not track it. So we were not kind of tracking it on our end. What they were going off of was, their business kind of premise was set on there is unconscious bias. Like, unconscious bias exists in healthcare settings. And when folks are trained in this way, and so they did have sort of proven models of the types of trainings that they were doing, the ways that, the trainings were on an app, that, small modules, quick quizzes, things like that. Those types of trainings would help folks retain it. And then they were doing with their contracts, then there would be patient surveys at the end to see, like, did people feel like they were being taken care of? So on their end, they were sort of measuring their own success based on whether people were feeling like they were being taken care of. They had, maternal mortality is a huge problem, and it's, along the racial divide in the US. Women of color are more likely to die in childbirth than their white counterparts. That's a fact that exists. This is something they're trying to combat. I don't know if they've moved the needle in that particular area, right? Like, themselves. But it's one tool that hospitals and other healthcare providers are trying to deploy to, like, move towards that. So it's a good question, but we ourselves are not measuring the impact of the business from a health care and a health outcomes perspective. Anita?
I think it was a great game to play, like, just to get yourself familiarized with a lot of the investment decisions that goes into impact investing. And also, from a strategy background, the way it was laid out, like stakeholders that you need and the kind of entity that you want to become, that from a strategic perspective, because I work in strategy, I think it's a great way of seeing your options in front of you and trying to understand what you want to be in the next 2 to 3 years, working within the company and company perspective. But also from perspective that I've never been in impact investing, this is a very, very easy way to familiarize myself and not be intimidated by, terms that are there in finance and can kind of make a barrier into entry. So thank you.
Great. Thanks for the comment on the strategic piece. I hadn't heard that before, so interesting. Thank you. Kelvin.
Yeah, so thanks a lot. I think it was the cards were very, helpful because I like running away from finance, particularly when it has to do with looking at the balance sheets, and so I try to evade it. Currently at work. So, but I think one of the things that the cards did was to also help me, like tell a story behind the numbers. So, like during the interactions, I just listen and ask questions and just try to make sense out of the chunk of monies I was seeing everywhere. And yes, I think they were very helpful. And yeah, thanks.
Great, thank you. Aaron.
Yeah, I thought it was like really, really interesting as well. And I can definitely see how like I think it's a very good exercise to understand like the place-based as well as like, as you mentioned, like the different types of transaction structures and types of capital that you guys use, and how like, because originally when I was thinking about it, it was like, oh, should I invest in this as like a VC equity investment? And it was like, oh, not really. But then as we went through like the different types of capital and transaction structures, like I started to like, think about, oh yeah, there are like other ways that we could help their business without, just providing equity and like diluting the capital stack. So yeah, I thought that was really, yeah, that was really helpful in just like seeing that. Yeah, I also had a question about like some of the impact covenants, like community control and like stuff like that. And I was wondering how strict are you guys with that? Because given that they're a startup, like I think it's helpful, but at the same time, like it could be very difficult to implement some of these stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, great question. With the impact covenants, we try not to do anything that would hamstring the business from a revenue generating perspective or from a from a business operations perspective, especially given where they are in their kind of growth trajectory. So that being said, we're really careful to set the covenants with the business owners. They are shared goals. And usually we pick, between 1 and 3 that we set together with them. And then we measure them every year. We come back and we talk about it with them. And oftentimes if they're aligned too, like they really want to meet those covenants too. So it's not something where we have to be super strict because they have the desire to achieve them as well. I know we're right at 2. Jock, I saw you come right off of mute though. So do you want to jump in quickly?
Did they make the payments? Did the company grow?
Oh
Yes.
yeah. Should I give like a super Cliff Notes version?
Yeah.
They today are alive and well and just raised a big equity round to bring this product more broadly across the country. So they're doing quite well. The initial payments, they got like a year holiday. The initial payments were a little spotty. This is why I'm like, maybe royalty was better. They had, and a couple people mentioned like, oh, we have to worry about the receivables. Like there's not a lot you can do with big hospital systems. They're just like not going to pay you for a while. It's just kind of the deal. So they were a little bit like figuring out payments in the beginning, and then it got up and running, and they did better. And then COVID hit, and right, you're trying to sell to a hospital. It's the COVID pandemic. They're like really focused on trying to meet this like emergent need. So they basically didn't make any sales for like 6 months, and rightfully so, right? Hospitals aren't going to do that kind of software provider onboarding when they're trying to solve an emergent crisis. So we had to restructure our facility during that period so that they can get through it. But I mean, the business is needed and the fundamentals are sound. And once hospitals were like, their hair wasn't as on fire, they went right back to buying it. And they've grown pretty steadily since. They had a leadership transition. The current CEO, or the CEO at the time of the case left, new CEO came on. But it's been smooth and effective really from them. And one last thing I'll mention, they expanded a little bit in terms of end market. So like a bunch of you mentioned government as a stakeholder. They actually ended up selling to local government to do training for their employees as well who exhibit bias. So throw that nugget in there just because you guys were on it.
Yeah, but from an investment perspective, it was a successful investment. We actually got repaid our first facility and made a second investment from our second fund.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for the question. Okay, let's wrap up. Thank you so much for having us. Stephen, I don't know if you have any housekeeping or final words that you'd like to say, but I'll just say that, this is a real honor and lovely to be in this room with so many bright minds from across the world in this fellowship. So thank you for bringing us here and sharing this time with us.
Yeah, I'll just say thank you very much, Zach and Aliana. We really appreciated you hosting us. It was a really great learning opportunity, and I'm grateful that you provided the resources that the fellows can use afterwards. So do check out those. Keep using them, and we'll do another session and discuss with those who couldn't be here today. As a housekeeping and as a final note, we do have the Impact Entrepreneur session this Friday, so I hope that you will be there if you can. And please make any further suggestions on the Impact Entrepreneur articles tonight so that I can pass those over to Lori Lane Zucker. Zach, Aliana, thank you both very, very much. I don't know if there's anything you want to say at the end, but really grateful for you to be here.
No, thank you. Yes.
Cool.
Take care,
All right.
everybody.
Be well.
Have a good one. Bye-bye. Thanks so much.
Yeah.